What's up, guys? Hey, wanted to talk to you guys about how to set your macros for fat loss. Is a question I get all the time, and I've done a podcast on it as well as a post. However, I feel like a long format video will give you guys a good starting point to be able to set your own macros for fat loss. And remember, this is just a guide, so let's jump into it. First step is going to be, you could do a bunch of math equations, or you can go to one of many websites. The one I like is bmrcalculator.org. We land on this page. Remember, this is just one of many sites. So we're going to use Mrs. Jones' example. She's 35 years old. She's a female, obviously. 150 pounds. Height, she's 5'6". So you're going to click calculate your BMR. It's going to bring you down to a screen. It's estimating that Mrs. Jones burns 1,394 calories just being her. Now, a super important thing to note here, we are throwing a dart. We are going to hit the board, but this is not the bullseye because it doesn't know your body, but this is a great starting point. So we come down. Now let's figure out your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure. You go some multipliers. Let's say Mrs. Jones is fairly active and works out 4 to 5 times a week, every single week with weights and cardio. I would go to moderate here. Very rarely are people going to be in the high category unless you're a construction worker, these type of trades where you're constantly active all day and you're working out, or CrossFit athletes who are training for maybe a meet or a competition. So we figure that number out. So we got 2161. That's roughly how many calories you need to maintain. So now we have 2161 as your base number that you need to eat to maintain your physique. So next step is, how do we figure out a deficit from that? Remember, a deficit can be anywhere from 5% all the way up to 30%. 30% is extreme. I don't recommend doing that. So let's go with a safe middle number of about 20% deficit. So we take this number, 2161, and we're going to times it by 0.80. We're leaving 20% off. Spits out 1728 at us. So let's make that a round even number for the sake of ease. So we have 1,700 calories. That is your calorie deficit. That's the number we need to hit. Second thing is, now let's establish what is your protein intake off of that. Remember, protein is the second most important part of that equation. So that could be anywhere from 0.7 grams all the way up to 1.25 grams per pound of body weight. So let's go with 0.8 grams. Let's say Mrs. Jones is not used to eating a lot of protein, needs to kind of ease into this. So we go back to Mrs. Jones' weight. Mrs. Jones weighs 150, so we times that by 0.80. What number we get? 120. So that is our protein number. We have 120 grams of protein. So remember, fat carries 9 calories per gram, but carbs and protein both carry 4 calories per gram. So now we take that and times it by 4 calories per gram. We end up with 480. So we have 480 of those calories coming from protein. So we have 480 calories. So now what percentage is that of 1,700? You're going to take 480 and divide it by 1,700. What number do we get? 28% of your calories. Let's round that, let's say around 30%. So roughly about 30% of your calories are coming from protein, according to this equation. So now, here's the big question. Where do you put your carbs and fats? Now, I need to preface this by saying this is where a coach really comes into play, because they get to know you, your particular activity level, your body type, and your dieting history. But let's say you don't have a coach, and for the sake of this, let's jump in and show you a rough estimate of where to put. Remember, you can put these carbs and fats wherever you want. You just have to play with it. Let's say Mrs. Jones is new into being in a calorie deficit. Let's not make sure we rob her carbs too much. So let's shoot for about 40% of those calories coming from carbs. So what do we do next? We take 1,700 calories times 0.40, because we're working about 40% of those calories coming from carbs. Remember, this is just a baseline estimate. What is the number we get? 680. So we have 680 calories coming from carbs. Now remember, carbs carry 4 calories per gram, so does protein. So we take 680 and divide that by 4, and we get 170 grams. So we take 170 plus 120, and that equals 290. Now we're going to take 290 and times that by 4, because remember, 4 calories per protein, 4 calories for carbs. We get 1,160 of our calories are coming from carbs and protein. So now we just simply figure out the rest, and we take 1,700, your total calorie number, and minus 1,160 off of that, and we get 540. 540 calories divided by 9, because remember, that carries 9 calories per gram, and we get 60 grams of fat. So out of the 1,700, here's where we're at. 120 protein, 170 carb, 60 fat, for a total of 1,700 calories. That is just an example. That fat could be lower, it could be higher, the protein could be adjusted slightly, but this is a baseline that I'd recommend at least starting with. You can toggle these carbs down if your activity isn't very high and toggle your fat or protein up, but this is just a baseline. The most important thing with setting your macros for fat loss by yourself is to remember, this is a process. Even with a coach, what I tell clients is I am throwing a dart. I can't promise it's going to hit the bullseye, but we're going to hit the board, just like I said in the beginning. So with that being said, you need to deploy ruthless patience with this and start to see what your body responds best to. But this, then you can toggle the calories up or down from here. Give it at least 14 to 20 days before making a switch to make sure that actually worked. Don't be that person that goes 5 days and I'm done. I'm just going to go switch it because I'm not dropping. This is a process. Be patient with yourself. Hopefully this helped as a guide to help you guys how to set your own macros for fat loss. Start there as a guide, toggle up and down, and see how it goes. Let's get it.